All right. Well, good morning. Welcome back.
Morning.
This is the second one that we have with the team. This is the Freedom to Collaborate from Anywhere session, and with us today, in no particular order this morning, have Andrew and Paul from Panzura, and my name is Phil from Microdesk. So, gentlemen, if you would like to do a quick introduction.
Off our way, I was first on the list. Andrew Engdahl, head of EMEA for Panzura.
Good morning. My name is Paul Dianis. I am the technical arm of the team for Panzura.
And I am Phil Dockrell, a cloud solutions consultant at Microdesk. And the reason Microdesk are doing this is because we are resellers of Panzura software. In fact, we were the partner of the year last year and the year before. And so that's why we're kind of joining in, hosting this. If you have registered for this event, I hope you have received the coffee. Remember, there are at least another 2 events coming up, and you can register for those as well. And you get the coffee pack delivered to you so you can enjoy. Yeah.
Time of day.
Yeah, that's right. Tea or coffee. You can. There's a selection. Do you remember in the old days when you're on an airplane and the lady used to walk around and say, "Hey, would you like a tea or a coffee?"
Yes.
Anyway.
Well, when night sandwich chuckers. My wife was one for a while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So the freedom to collaborate from anywhere. Okay. So what do we mean by freedom? And this is kind of catered because Microdesk are Autodesk resellers as well, huge partners with Autodesk, and we work quite a lot with the AEC architecture, engineering, construction industry. So the examples here you find today are very AEC related. So we're going to talk about tools like Revit and things like that. But it applies to pretty much anything. Is that right, Paul?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anything that you want to that you would run on a normal Windows server in a single office applies here.
So this could be content for marketing, it could be documents in finance, it could be pretty much anything.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
I mean, you think about the workflow that you deal with. It's everything when it's coming in, everything's going out. And the challenge that we have is we are not an individual office anymore as an industry. We are a series of offices with lots of disciplines and lots of specialties that exist. And so trying to figure out a way of being able to utilize those resources regardless to the geo gives us the power of being able to do better than our competition.
There we go. And that's pretty important. Because Andrew, you've had feedback about how streamlining processes and things like that are really important to industries.
Yeah, I think
and how Panzura can help, right?
Exactly. I mean, several of our clients that we work with see that using Panzura is a competitive advantage. The speed to market, the flexibility, the agility that the application allows. It improves that far-end performance, which has a knock-on effect for the way in which these organisations work with their own clients. So we're helping springboard our clients' footprint into their own clients.
Got it. So if you've had this last year, basically for everyone, there has been some sort of administrative, technical challenge. So how that would have had an impact on people trying to deliver projects, that would have an impact on people just trying to do their jobs, right? So have you seen an impact, and have people been more inquisitive about Panzura? Do they understand what hybrid cloud solutions are?
Huge question. I think Paul's probably best.
I like big questions.
To answer that, but that's a huge question. Do people understand what hybrid cloud is about?
Yeah.
What do you think, Paul?
Well, and you're absolutely spot on. It's the phone has definitely been ringing off the hook because of that particular challenge. You started out with the idea of a disaster recovery plan as a way that we had to implement because, frankly, we had no concept of this thing before. And so, yeah, it is extremely relevant these days. If you think about the idea of buying somebody a laptop and throwing a Revit on that laptop, you've got the application, but they're sitting at the house. So being able to collaborate from anywhere, leveraging things like the cloud, thinking Amazon, Google, Azure, I can actually get half a mile or 3 miles down the road from the user. So the latency for that particular user has been dropped dramatically. It becomes, for some organizations, what I call COVID was a non-event. They're working in the office, on Friday, on Monday they're working from home. It's that kind of that simple concept, right?
Okay. So, and then we're talking about collaboration from anywhere. So that is there's a reason why we chose this title, is because Panzura has a product called Freedom Collaboration.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's a bit of clever wording
Nice
there.
segue. Nice segue.
I'll do my best. I do my best. And so the Freedom Collaboration tool, I mean, it says here it's going to replace legacy NAS. This is the example where you talk about having dissecting the server in the office and sharing it around. Is that the right example here?
Yeah, I think the idea is really, you picture the idea of a single window server. I mean, back in the 70s and 80s when the applications were being built, and frankly, it's worked that way since it's created, that you had that single window server where everybody was in the office and you were sitting next to the data, so it was very fast. You're able to share information. You're able to do things like element borrowing within a single work set within Revit, for example. And so you had that capability. Now, being able to take that Windows Server concept into pieces and put one in New York and Los Angeles and London and Tokyo, and having a piece of that server available literally for anybody that's connected to that office or to that particular piece of the server gives the same experience. So everybody's working on the same server in a sense, even though they're in different locations. So absolutely spot on.
So here's the next. Sorry,
I was just going to say, Phil, that's the same for whether you're sitting behind a laptop or any kind of mobile device. So that freedom is real, true freedom.
Got it. So here's the next bit, the big one. So Paul, how does it work?
You do love these very large questions, don't you?
That's it. Yeah. Nice and vague. Here we go.
Exactly. It's magic.
Yes. No, honestly, from the user's perspective, they don't even know that anything other than a server in the office exists. You have
like another drive on the. Just be like another drive on in Explorer. They just save files as they normally would.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Q drive. It's the R drive. It's the N drive. It's the S drive. And so when they save a file, they just save it to a server. And the system automatically does its own deduplication and compression on the data. So that allows us to be able to create data mobility on the information very quickly. We also have what we call the metadata, which is the data about the data, who owns the data, where's the data, when's it accessed, all that stuff. And we store that locally on the server in that office. We call it a filer. And so when the users are communicating, about 90% of the I/O is from the metadata calls. Think about the idea of a civil model. You're opening up the sheet set manager. Well, it needs to go through a lot of iterations, and part of that is trying to get a hold of the XREFs, the external reference files. And so what it does is, again, those are all metadata calls. It has nothing to do with the actual file itself. It's just the metadata calls. So we store that data locally on the filers. And then because of the deduplication and compression and storing the data up in the cloud, it allows us to be able to do that, move that data from one location to another. And if you think about this, if I have metadata in each location, that means 90% of the I/O is serviced by that user in that location. And then also what we do is we recognize through that deduplication and compression what is active data. So in the case of a Revit model, we will have 100% of the Revit model in Site A and in Site B. And so when the users are working with it, they're working with a local copy of the data. And because of that deduplication and compression, we're able to transfer just the delta difference between the two. So when I'm borrowing an element in New York, and if I'm in London and I want to borrow another element, it's literally, I just need to change or just send the permissions file. I call it an ePerms file, it doesn't matter what it is, but it's just the delta change of that ePerms file that gives me permissions to open up that model or to be able to borrow that element in real time.
So when you say delta changes, it's like literally just the work that I'm actually working on. It's not the entire file again.
No.
So would that be an experience like where you've had people who are looking at the clock on a Friday afternoon trying to work out what time they have to hit the save button to save their work before they can go home, because it'll take them like 45 minutes for the document to save. Is that kind of a latency Is that what we're talking about?
That's exactly the case, right? So, I mean, you would not expect to wait 20 to 45 minutes for a sync with Central if you were talking to a local server. The challenge that you have is you have somebody that's remote that's actually impacting the entire model. So giving the capability of allowing the user to be local for all their data means the sync with Central literally happens, depending on the size of the model, less than a minute, within 30 seconds. And so, yeah, the response of that potato, it's exactly what you're talking about. It also eliminates this wonderful, highly descriptive message that Autodesk uses called "your file is corrupted."
Oh,
right?
yes. Everyone loves those.
Yeah, that never happens, right?
So I've heard of stories of people almost working like shifts. So like you're on the early shift, and the first thing you do when you get to the office is switch on the machines and start the process of opening the files, because when your colleagues arrive an hour later, they want to start work. I mean, and then in theory, I mean, and then you've got people that, I'm going to go to the client now, make sure you've saved everything because I need you to save it, and then I need to download it before I get to the client's place. I mean, so these are people that are kind of, I don't know, it sounds like they have a workflow in place, but it's not optimized. Or
well, I think what you're doing is you're adapting your processes to the limitations of the technology. So what you need to do,
adapting the processes to the limitation of your technology. Nice, Paul. I like that one.
Thank you. It's the IT business that we've been doing since day one, right? So we have a single file system. We need to get users. Look at the idea of how some of the gaming communities used to develop stuff. What they used to do is what his word is, we would ship people on planes and get them together to be able to work together. That was collaboration, pay hotel bills and travel bills and the whole thing. Now I look at a company like up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, who what their process is actually to hire the best, regardless to geo, because their office is a global office with the single file server existing any place. Then they can hire somebody in Alaska to do the job that they need to do, and it allows the resource not to necessarily to move. Think about the difference of hiring a sub in your town or hiring somebody within your organization. It takes anywhere from 8 months for a sub down to 8 hours for somebody that works for your same company, even though they're in a different geo. And go ahead.
Yeah, and then at the same time, not only are we talking about collaboration, but I mean, by its very nature, you've got huge amounts of data that needs to be moved to and from. So you've got large files that need to be shipped around. And then not only that, but now because you're using deduplication and the compression, that means that other files, the data is still the same, but the files are smaller, right? And they move quicker. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of deduplication and compression. The first thing when I saw this particular slide, I thought about LiDAR or point cloud, right?
Okay.
So a lot of that information are geospatial data. ArcGIS is a good example of that, I guess, where I need to have that large bits of information available to the user that needs it pretty much the immediately time that we need that, right? It could be as simple as some pictures that exist based on the job site, to be able to use your phone and click those pictures and get it immediately in front of the guy that's creating the slicks necessary for the CDs. You know, all of that stuff. So it's really, it becomes a data transfer to be kind of a non-event to be able to push these data back and forth. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and then you mentioned, sorry, Andrew, yeah?
No, just say you were mentioning about moving data around. We have clients today. I mean, this is still today that will have large files that need to be worked on in different offices in different countries, and I swear they put them onto flash drives and use FedEx or some other shipping company to send it to far-reach countries where, because they see that as the most expedient way of doing it, and that's today. I mean, obviously they're not using Panzura, but it's not a problem of the past. It's a problem of today.
This was people carrying on with like legacy solutions to problems that actually technically don't exist anymore if they had the right software in place.
Yeah,
adapting their process to the limitations of what they understand, what the technology is.
Exactly.
And I suppose if you do have a cloud migration, if you've gone like Office 365 and you're putting data into the cloud, you're comfortable, and I bet you've got other cloud solutions, for your accounting software and things like that, right? Maybe your CRM tools and things like that. So people must be comfortable with cloud, with the security of the cloud. But then this is where you need that extra boost when you're working with huge amounts of, when you're working with big files. This is where you need Panzura.
Well, I think it's a couple of things actually that you're probably dealing with. It's islands of data as well. If you're using things like Box and Dropbox, there's that location. You have the different sites with their location. You're using replication, which is the way of trying to share that information. And how do you handle locks in this process? The concept of the single Windows server cut into pieces, that could be 2 offices, or it could be 500 or 1,000 offices. It all works the same way, where each office, what we're doing is it's so efficient that it between of that 1,000 offices, you may have 5 offices work together within a single work set in a Revit model. And so the communication is specifically around those 5 guys. It's sort of like we all carry a cell phone, and that's millions and millions of cell phones, but the communication is occurring between you and me. And so that's where the communication occurs, and that's how Revit works. Is just we're communicating specifically to the people that need it at that particular time.
And I suppose from a GDPR point of view as well, your data is so important, and you need to know where your data is. So if you've got a bunch of guys using Box and other guys using Dropbox, and then you're sharing stuff via email and things like that, because you're just trying to, and I firmly believe in positive intent, that people don't do things maliciously. They do things because they're under pressure to get the job done, and they'll just do what the path of least resistance to get that task finished, right?
Path of least resistance, yeah.
Yeah, and then if you've got, from a GDPR point of view, if I say I want you, so we move from one project to the next, and I say I want you to tell me where all my data is, well, then you have to go through everyone's Dropbox and Box and this and that to try and find. So having a single source of truth is almost a legal requirement, really.
Well, it's interesting because we haven't even talked about GDPR. We've been looking at the idea of sharing across the world, but also it's the capability of security of knowing where your data is. I have the capability of actually identifying who's using me being the customer, can identify who's using a particular file, where the data is coming from, where they go into. Like if somebody quit this morning, I can actually track and determine what he's access to, within the last 60 days. It's kind of out of the scope of the process, but this means that if stuff needs to stay within the EU, it stays within the EU and it doesn't separate. You have the power and capability and choice to put things anywhere you want to in order to service your need, right?
Got it.
We should cover that whole topic off, Phil, in a separate session.
That's a good
idea.
Panzura
addresses so many different touch points with inside data, transmission, acknowledgement, the whole thing, everything that Paul's been talking about. We should actually have a separate session on that, I think.
Sounds good. Leave your comments below if you're interested in having a session like that.
Yeah.
And you can also like and subscribe. This is going to be on YouTube as well. It's going on YouTube, LinkedIn, and things. So you can like and subscribe and put any comments in below. If you do have any questions, of course, as well, you're very welcome to contact us. And I think that's about it. We've got a couple of seconds left just to cover it up.
Thank you for your time.
That was pretty interesting. It was so hybrid cloud solution. You can work anywhere you want with files as big as you need. Metadata goes from place to place. Files go into the cloud. Deduplication, compression, encryption, military grade encryption, AES-256. So yeah, it's all good.
Now, let me leave you with the idea this eliminates backups too.
Eliminates backups.
Yeah, you see, I see another topic session coming along.
I think that's, yeah.
We'll have to use that segue.
Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Phil.
That's great. Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye.